The intent of this video is to review 21st Bomber Command's Japanese anti-oil bombing campaign during World War II. By the start of the year 1945, Japan was critically running short of oil. This was due to the U.S. Navy's submarine efforts in targeting Japanese oil tankers and the B-29 sea mining campaign. This chart from a declassified 1946 United States Strategic Bombing Survey report titled Oil in Japan's War outlines the location of Japan's wartime oil sources and graphically shows the overall oil distribution system. Japanese oil was sourced mostly from the captured southern islands of Borneo, Java, and Sumatra. This map from a March 1945 Enemy Oil Committee Office of the Quartermaster report titled Petroleum Facilities on Borneo outlines the oil fields and refinery locations on the island of Borneo. This image is an example of a Borneo oil field. Japan started the war on imported oil. 80% of its pre-war oil came from the U.S. Only 10% of Japan's oil needs came from domestic wells or synthetic oil plants. The Pearl Harbor attacking aircraft and 6 aircraft carriers were likely fueled by imported U.S. oil. The 21st Strategic Bombing Campaign prioritized Japanese targets for destruction. Oil refineries and storage facilities were fourth on the list after aircraft, ordnance, shipbuilding, and repair. In April 1945, Army Air Force intelligence reassessed the target situation, as discussed in this U.S. Army Air Force in World War II Volume 5 report titled The Pacific, Matterhorn to Nagasaki. They came to the conclusion that Japanese oil industry was in a critical state and 21st Bomber Command should redirect bombing efforts to home island oil production and storage. The 315th Bomb Wing would be dedicated to targeting Japan's home island oil refineries and storage facilities. The 315th Wing operated the new B-29B models. The B-29B models were all built by Bell Aircraft Corporation out of Marietta, Georgia. This chart from a 1953 U.S. Air Force Historical Studies Division document titled Development of Night Air Operations 1941 to 1952 outlines the anti-oil bombing campaign. The bombing of Japan oil installations would be conducted at night, adopting new precision radar bombing techniques. The 315th B-29 planes were fitted with the new APQ-7 radar. The APQ-7 is also known as Eagle radar. This image shows the Eagle radar vane on a B-17 bomber undergoing test evaluation. This image shows the Eagle radar vane on a B-24 bomber undergoing test evaluation. The radar vane is 16 feet 5 inches in length and weighs 1,100 pounds. This image shows the Eagle radar installed on a B-29 bomber. This is a close-up view of the vane on a B-29. The unit was trained for high-altitude bombing. It was assumed that Japanese bomber interceptors could not attack bombers at altitudes of 35,000 feet, except for rear attacks. Because of this preference for tail attacks, none of the bomber gun turrets were installed, except for the tail turret. The premise that Japanese interceptors concentrated their attacks from the rear at night is supported by this chart from an April 1945 21st Bomber Command Aero Intelligence report. 60% of the 231 night attacks occurred from the rear quarter quadrant. Only 12% of the attacks occurred from the front quadrant. Since the new B-29B models arrived without crown or belly turrets, it would not be wise to bomb without these gun defenses during the day. The 315th would attack at night at medium altitudes below 15,000 feet. Japan's oil situation was critical. No oil shipments were reaching Japan from the southern areas. The 315th Wing would bomb Japan home island installations using the APQ-7 radar for precision night medium altitude attacks. The APQ-7 radar was designed for blind bombing. The standard World War II-era B-29 bomber adopted the older APQ-13 radar, which gave a 360-degree downward view. This image shows the APQ-13 radar. The APQ-7 radar projects a 120-degree forward beam. The new Eagle radar provides 10 times the definition as the older sets. This equates to more accurate bombing. During nighttime bombing combat conditions, 30% of the bombs fell within 2,000 feet of the aiming point, as compared to 18% with planes using the older APQ-13 radar sets. This is around 75% of the daylight bombing accuracy, as discussed in the Library of Congress Curtis LeMay's speech titled B-29 Campaigns in the Pacific. Aiming points were also easier to find. Since the target can be sighted farther away, the bombardier can start the bomb run setup at a distance of 70 miles from the target. This is more than twice the distance to set up the bomb run as compared with the older radar units. This article, from a July 7, 1945 21st Bomber Command Air Intelligence Report, discusses the 315th's first mission on the night of June 26-27, 1945. Elimination of the turrets cuts down on weight and drag and increases speed. The B-29B model's engines also have fuel-injected carburetors. An example of the APQ-7's radar scope image is shaded here. Other changes to the B-29 models include pneumatic bomb bay doors, gloss black painted bellies, and the APG-15 interceptor tail tracking radar. The last two modifications were covered in the channel's videos. One of the modifications worked, one did not. This map shows the anti-oil campaign target locations from an Air Command and Staff College report titled A Unit History of the 315th Bomb Wing 1944 through 1946. This table expands the 15 gasoline alley missions to include 21st Bomber Command mission number, date of mission, target name and location, B-29's airborne, percent bombing primary target, target sighting method, bomb weight per aircraft in pounds, total bomb weight dropped in tons, altitude range of bomb release in feet, landing reserve fuel in pounds, B-29's lost, and mission notes. The chart was created from data extracted from the tactical mission reports. Notice that the Mark 64 500-pound general-purpose bomb was selected for all the missions except for the last mission. This image shows the Mark 64s being loaded on a B-17 bomber. The B-17 can carry up to 12 of these bombs internally. The B-29s carried between 29 and 40 of these bombs during the gasoline alley missions. This chart from a September 1945 National Defense Research Committee document titled Weapons Data, Fire, Impact, Explosion outlines the characteristics of U.S. general-purpose demolition bombs. The Mark 64 bomb's parameters are located in this shaded row. The full-up weight of the bomb varied between 510 and 544 pounds depending on the bomb's explosive fill. The weight of the explosive fill is around 50% of the weight of the bomb. The other 50% of the bomb's weight is its steel casing, stabilizing fin, and fuses. This image shows the structural damage of various general-purpose bombs that can be inflicted upon a row of brick buildings. The damage from a 500-pound class bomb is shown on this row of buildings. The bomb's fuse was set for instantaneous detonation. The fuse setting for the gasoline alley missions was set to a small time delay to allow the bomb to penetrate either the ground, plant structure, or storage tanks prior to detonation. This image from a June 1945 Army Air Force Evaluation Board document titled The Relative Effectiveness of Various Types of Bombs and Fuses outlines the crater sizes for general-purpose bomb. The crater dimension of a Mark 64 500-pound general-purpose bomb set with a 0.01 second tail fuse delay is located in this shaded row. A crater will be formed with a diameter of 32 feet and a depth of 9 feet. Let's take a look at the gasoline alley missions number 9 and 13 as a case study. The Ube coal-to-fuel plant was part of the Japanese Imperial Fuel Industry Company. The plant provided gasoline, light oils, and fuel oils from the distillation of coal. The plant can produce 700 barrels of products per day. This table shows the products and quantities the plant can produce per day. The plant was targeted during 4 bombing raids as shown on this page from the reference shown earlier. 6,299 Mark 64 500-pound general-purpose bombs were released during raids 2, 3, and 4, as shown in this row. All of the bomb fuses were set with a small time delay. 1,309 bombs fell within the plant area. This map shows the location of the bomb hits where each dot represents a 500-pound bomb strike. The number of bomb strikes per plant component is shown in these columns. The percentage of damage is shown in this column. Overall, 70% of the plant was damaged. This image shows the extent of the Ube plant bomb damage, producer gas unit damage, acid treatment plant damage, additional Ube plant damage image. The plant was so badly damaged it will need to be completely rebuilt. So how effective was the 15 gasoline alley bombing missions? This chart shows the Japanese crude oil imports and production. The x-axis is a year and quarter from 1931 to second quarter of 1945. The y-axis is 1,000 barrels per month from 0 to 2,000. The area plots represent domestic production and imports. The imports in this shaded region were the pre-U.S. oil embargo. The gasoline alley bombing raids occurred during this time zone sliver. This chart represents refined Japanese oil product inventories, monthly consumption, and monthly production. Submarine shipping attacks, the B-29's sea mining campaign, contributed to a decline in the fuel measurements before the gasoline alley raids started. Due to the blockade, most of the refineries were inactive during the bombing campaign. They lacked crude oil to process. Many storage tanks were empty when bombed. The Japanese dispersed the remaining stocks to smaller fuel storage locations. The quantity of stocks destroyed by the targeted oil bombing campaign equated to 41,000 barrels. The bombing efforts also destroyed 7.6 million barrels worth of mostly empty storage tanks. This table summarizes the oil stocks destroyed by the concentrated oil industry bombing efforts. The oil campaign bombing results are summarized on this page from the reference shown earlier. In the 15 missions, the 315th Wing destroyed the major oil industries of Japan. 9 refineries were inoperative. 6 million barrels of storage capacity had been destroyed, at a cost of 3 planes lost, 66 damaged, and 30 crew member casualties. This chart from a December 1946 United States Strategic Bombing Survey report document titled "The Effects of Strategic Bombing on Japanese War Economy" indicate that by June 1945, at the start of the B-29 oil production and storage plant attacks, the Japanese inventories of crude oil were already gone and the refineries were shut down. Only a small amount of oil was destroyed in those 15 bombing raids. The 15 bombing raids on Japan's oil installation and storage made no difference to the enemy's strength. It appears the 15 oil bombing attacks were irrelevant to the war effort. Oil production had stopped and the destruction of the remaining stocks was not significant. The oil campaign bombing effects were more apparent than real, as discussed on this page summarizing the oil bombing campaign. The storage tanks were empty and the refineries were operating at only 4% of their capacity. Lack of intelligence on the state of Japan's economy was a justification for the oil bombing program. It was submarines and the B-29 sea mining efforts that dried up Japan's oil program. A lieutenant general with the IJA indicated there was a decrease in war material production due to bombing, as discussed in this 1946 document titled "Interrogation of Japanese Industrial, Military, and Civil Leaders of World War II." There was also a complete interruption of the transport to the southern regions, especially oil, which disrupted Japan's economy. This eliminated all hope of victory. In summary, the new B-29B bombers of the 315th Wing were well suited for precision, nighttime, medium-altitude bombing of oil and storage installations. However, the bombing results, while impressive on paper, were irrelevant to the war effort, as oil storage tanks were mainly empty and the oil production facilities were operating at only 4% of their capacity. On the other hand, the U.S. submarine and sea mining efforts paid out orders of magnitude in dividend. Any thoughts on the data or chart shown? Let me know in the comments section, and please consider engaging by liking or subscribing to the channel World War II U.S. Bombers.